everyone, and welcome to the official All Things Watched podcast, where we talk all things movies, television, streaming, and everything in between. In this episode of our podcast, we will be talking about the brand new movie, The Creator, which is a brand new original science fiction movie. And it is very refreshing to see that we can still get some really great, original science fiction movies in the modern era. Because let's be honest, pretty well everything you can think of has already been done by some studio or by someone somewhere, whether that be a big blockbuster hit or a small independent movie. Either way, pretty well everything you could think of has pretty well been done at this point. So I do find that as the years go on, especially in today's age, originality is still there, but it's far and few in between. But I will say that The Creator, was absolutely a great original sci-fi story. Because we are over here on the podcast, this is an open spoiler conversation. So if you have not seen The Creator, then I will absolutely ruin it for you. So go and check out the film and then come back and listen to the podcast. So with that being said, you have been warned. This is a spoiler review. So let's just go right ahead and jump right into the story. Now, essentially, The Creator at heart, really what it is a story about a man who's trying to redeem himself and sort of find a new family after sort of losing his own family, if that sort of makes sense. Now, this movie was written by Gareth Edwards and Chris Weitz and was directed by Gareth Edwards, of course. He directed Rogue One, and in my opinion, Rogue One is the best modern Star Wars story that we've had. I honestly don't like any of the new Star Wars stuff, but I did like Rogue One. I will give credit when credit's due. He did a phenomenal job with that, and it shows in this movie. You can tell that in this movie there are a lot of similarities to Rogue One, especially with how some of the fighters look. They very much look like the Rebellion from Star Wars, and you can tell that some of the AI, some of the robots, you can tell are kind of similar to some of the droids in Star Wars. Not identical. It's not a copy and paste, but all I'm saying is that you can see where Gareth has been inspired by the Star Wars franchise. You can see where he's gotten some of his inspiration. I also seen some similarities to the movie, another sci-fi robotic movie called After Yang, which we'll get into after. And also I seen some similarities to The Matrix and whatnot. So let's just go ahead and sort of talk about the movie. We'll break down the scenes a little bit as well, and all that good stuff. And then we'll give our thoughts and opinions about it, and I'll talk about the positives, the negatives, and some of the similarities I've seen with this one from other movies, and all that good stuff. So let's jump into it. So essentially, the movie opens up basically with the backstory of the AI versus man, so to speak, and it really shows how basically how AI has come to be and how it has been exponentially expanding, becoming more intelligent than what it already was, learning, and basically gets to the point of creating its own civilization. Now, before we get to the actual opening scene, we actually see a definition. The movie actually defines something called nirmata, the word nirmata, and they actually give a couple different definitions of it, and it says Nepalese for the creator, the mysterious or unknown architect of advanced AI. And then it also says under like a secondary definition of nirmata, it says a being worshipped by AI as their creator, savior, God. So that is essentially why this movie is, I guess that's why they called it The Creator, because really it sort of stands for Nirmata, which is all about the creation of artificial intelligence. So for the first probably 5 to 6, maybe even 10 minutes of the movie, I don't even know if we could go that far to 10 minutes, but every bit of the first 6 or 7 minutes for sure. The movie really does a great job at showing us just that, showing sort of the creation of AI, so to speak, and talks about the war and basically the growing distrust between humanity and the artificial intelligence, because essentially that's what the movie is. Believe it or not, this movie is actually not about artificial intelligence becoming evil. It is not about artificial intelligence wanting to take over the world. In fact, it's actually the movie actually does a really good job at making you sympathize sympathize with the artificial intelligence, really, because the only reason why the war even really began is simply because of humanity being afraid of the advancements of the AI that they have created. So it's not that the AI is a threat, is that it could possibly or potentially be a threat in the future. However, today where we stand, the AI is not a threat. They are simply attacking the AI and just trying to go to war with AI and destroy AI simply because they are afraid of what AI could become, but not necessarily what it is right now. And like I said, the movie does a great job at making you sympathize with the AI, and at times it even makes you forget that some of these characters that we're seeing is actually artificial intelligence. It's not always as black and white as you might think. So then after we get the definition of Nirmata, and then after we see the sort of the introduction of the AI, and they give us that little bit of backstory to the creation of AI and sort of a backstory to the war, then we are introduced to the main character of the story, which is, of course, Joshua. And he is portrayed by John David Washington, who does a phenomenal job. And we start to see a lot of these flashbacks, and we really see him really connecting with his wife. I believe her name was Maya in the movie. Her name is Maya, and she is portrayed by Gemma Chan. Once again, does a phenomenal job with her performance and all that stuff. And of course, they ends up having a child as well. I'm pretty sure they say that she's pregnant and she has a child. And of course, now at this time, Joshua is basically in the army, or he's a part of this sort of special ops type thing where they're, basically going to war with the AI and whatnot. And anyways, the long story short is essentially he ends up losing his wife, or at least so he thinks and whatnot, and he ends up losing his child and whatnot. And then that's, so for the first 10 to 15 minutes, basically that's what this whole movie is about. It's about showing the origins of Joshua, showing the origins of the war, showing the origins of the AI, and that is really essentially how the story begins. Now, of course, eventually as the story continues, Joshua will be sucked back into this war because basically the idea is that humanity has now learned that the AI has created a weapon, which they are very afraid of, because I think that, for at least from what I can gather, a lot of it is that they just simply don't really know what this weapon can do. And of course, we are afraid of what we don't know. We are afraid of what we don't understand. So, I think that that's essentially why they really were so intimidated by this weapon. They didn't really know what the AI could do, or what this new weapon would mean for the war. How could it stop the war and whatnot? And they do sort of demonstrate the powers of the weapon later on in the movie. But at this point in time, we don't really know what it is until we get to that point and whatnot, and we learn that the weapon is actually a small child. Now, this is actually a very brutal scene when the humans actually gets to, say, one of the labs and whatnot. We learn that, we see the humans are sort of like, really it's the U.S. military, it's the military side of the humans. They go in and they just slaughter a bunch of these scientists and whatnot, and it's, it was a pretty brutal scene. It was pretty bloody. Now, I wouldn't go as far as saying gory, but it was a very bloody scene and whatnot, and it just shows, once again, showing how humans are afraid of what we don't know. We're afraid of what we don't understand, and so, they really go in gun blazing, excuse me. And I will say that for a majority of this movie, the action is honestly a pretty non-stop action movie. But what really shines in this movie, of course, is the special effects. Sorry, folks, I had to have a drink. But it's the CGI in this movie that really shines, and they do just such a phenomenal job with the CGI. Now, I won't go as far as saying that the CGI is quite as good as Dune, but it is still. It does still set a very high bar nonetheless, especially later on in the movie when you see, like, there's one scene when this giant, robotic thing comes in, or not robotic, but this giant, is like a piece of machinery that the military uses, but is very advanced. And when you see that coming through the wilderness in the distance, you see the trees falling down and whatnot. Another story, or another scene very reminiscent to Star Wars, but we'll get into that later. But either way, the action is very nonstop, and they go to this research lab to try to find this weapon. And also, what this scene does as well is it also shows us that not all the humans are against the AI, because in this place specifically, there's actually humans helping AI as well. So it's not like it's just one side versus the other. Like I said, this job does a very good job at showing that things are not as black and white as we might see. Now, when they go to this research facility, of course, the AI ends up fighting back. They do have a little skirmish here, a little battle, a little fight or war, I guess we'll say. And when I first seen the robots here, it really put me in mind of that robot that was in the 1990s Power Rangers movie, I believe. It had like the round disc head. What's his name? Alpha, or I think that was his name, Alpha. And so that really, I had a lot of reminiscence to the original Power Rangers, at least the American Power Rangers back in the 90s. When I first seen these robots come out, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, oh, this type of design for this robot must have come from Star Wars. So I thought that was really interesting. And also, you could also, for the first time in the movie too, you could really see Star Wars shining through here from Garrett's work with Star Wars. When these U.S. military ends up attacking this base, they very much are wearing things that look a lot like the rebels from Rogue One. And of course, Joshua is a part of this scrimmage and whatnot as well. Excuse me. So they keep going and whatnot, and I believe it was actually Joshua that ends up getting in, and when he gets in, he ends up finding the weapon, and it turns out that the weapon is actually a little girl, but of course, I guess it's not technically a girl if it's a robot or it's an artificial intelligence. But that's what the weapon is. It's this little girl, or this little AI robot thing, which appears to be a girl, and it is a child, and her name is Elfie. Of course, that is reminiscent once again to the creator, sort of callback to the title of the movie, but also sort of like a biblical thing as well. The Alpha and Omega, the beginning, but also the end. So the end of one thing, the beginning of another thing, and that is essentially why this AI child is called Elfie. And the character is portrayed by Madeline Una Voiles, and she just does a phenomenal job. Honestly, she just really makes your heart throb. She does such a phenomenal job, and she does such a good job, actually, along with the writing of this movie, that it really makes you try to, you really forget that she's a robot, that she is an AI, and that essentially is what this movie does throughout the entire movie. Is it really makes you question your morals. If you were in Joshua's position, would you be able to kill this child even though it's not real? It really makes you question what is real, what is not real. And to me, that part of the movie was very similar to The Last of Us. Whether you play the video game or you've seen the HBO series of The Last of Us, that's really what this sort of part of the story made me feel like. It made me feel almost like she was the answer, except in The Last of Us, it's a girl that's immune, and Joel is not able to, he's wrestling with this idea. If I let her die, then she could save all of humanity. But he grows such an attachment to Ellie that Joel is not willing to let her go. And that's exactly how I felt about this relationship here between Joshua and this little young AI. I felt that Joel and Ellie connection. Except the AI, I think, was probably even younger than Ellie, and I think that she was a very strong performer, but not stronger than Bella Ramsey. I thought she did a phenomenal job portraying Ella as well, but you get what I'm saying. I really got that vibe of The Last of Us. That relationship between Joshua and Alfie really, to me, was very strong. Joel and Ellie type vibe, and so I really, the moment that you see the little girl, for me at least, I really connected with her. I was like, oh man, like I can see why AI would choose to have a little girl as their secret weapon, because I think that the AI knew that humanity would sympathize with the little girl, because it's a child. So, I would think that, and I guess now that I'm thinking about it, that also really shows the intelligence of the AI. It was smart enough to figure out that the best weapon that it could use against humanity would be a child, or the AI in the form of a child, because that would be the hardest for them to kill. It would be easiest for them to sympathize, and even for us, the audience, it really draws out the emotion of a child, because, like I said, she does such a great job with her performance that there are times in this movie where you forget that they are not even real, they're robots. And honestly, there's actually lines in the movie when some of the characters actually have to remind even us, the audience, that this is not real. This is not a real person. This is a computer or a piece of machinery. It just looks like a person. It acts like a person. It sounds like a person. It moves like a person, but it's not a person. And that's really what, like I said before, not trying to sound like a broken record, but that's really what this movie does a great job at doing. It really plays with that and really forces you to sort of balance out the morality versus reality, I guess. So morality versus reality. Where do your morals stand? But how far, what do it'd be really hard to, shoot a child that's an AI, but at the same time, that human emotion of knowing that it's a child, even though it's not real, it's still a child. You know what I mean? Like, it still looks and acts and talks like a child. And this movie and the movie actually breaks itself up into different sort of sections, I guess, almost like a part 1, part 2, part 3, or act 1, act 2, act 3 type thing, and because the moment we see Alfie and we see her, introduced in the movie, the screen actually goes black, and then kind of like a subtitle or a title actually comes up, and it says "The Child." So the movie is done in that sort of chapter or act type of storytelling. Is almost like, okay, well, now we've seen the introduction to the AI, we've seen the introduction to Joshua, we got some of his backstory. Now we're also introduced to the AI's weapon, which is a child, and then they actually. So, okay, now we've done the introduction. Now let's move on to the next part, which is actually called The Child. Now, of course, as the movie goes on, Joshua obviously is going to grow very attached to the child. Just like I said, it's a lot like Joel and Ellie's relationship. And whatnot. So it was really cool. Actually, I think it's probably another great example of that as well would be from the what was it called? The TV show called Let the Right One In, I think it was called, Let the Right One In, or something like that. And same idea where you got like this father and daughter relationship, except in that movie the daughter is actually a vampire, whereas in this one it's an AI. So I would say it's probably closer to this one. It's probably actually closer to Let the Right One In, but still very much has a reminiscence of The Last of Us as well. So anyways, then we get to, so after that subtitle comes up, The Child, then the story continues on, and we start to see Joshua, he's continuing his adventure, and, like I said, he is connecting with the child, but he's also starting to he's starting to bond with the child, but he's also sort of starting to, I won't go as far as say turn against his own kind. He's not necessarily going against humanity. He's not necessarily straight up against the U.S. military, but he is starting to sympathize with the child, and he is sort of seeing that the military is willing to do things basically that are, that are a little bit extreme. So, at first, before he gets to this point, he's still here in this area because these AIs and this artificial intelligence is... Folks, I had to start a new clip. I accidentally hit the stop record button. Yeah, so anyways, before Joshua gets to that point where he's actually willing to sort of go against the U.S. government, before he fully attaches to the little girl, the little AI, he's sort of trapped in this zone where they are living, because now this is a piece that I thought was sort of a lot like the Matrix movies, how these AIs are basically, stuck in this one area, like in the Matrix, all the AI, there's a designated spot for them to, live in the Matrix. Well, it's the same thing here, which I think they say was Watanama or whatever it's called, that place, I think. Anyways, you get what I'm trying to say here. All these AIs, all these robots, they live in one section of the world. So, of course, when Joshua gets the girl, he's sort of trying to run away from both sides. He's kind of trying to get away from the U.S. military, but he's also sort of trying to get away from the AI. Like, he's really confused, really. He's really just trying to escape and live with this little AI and whatnot. And also, we're also introduced to, as well, to another really cool character, Colonel Howell, who's portrayed by Allison Janney, who does a phenomenal job with her as well. Well, she sort of becomes like that lead lieutenant. She's sort of like the commander of the U.S. military, and she's really leading the war, leading the tactical war specifically against, the AI and against the civilization. And she's really, the one trying to find the child, trying to find Elfie and find this weapon. And she's like she will be the U.S. leader, we'll say. But one thing that, once again, like I said, the movie does a really good job at making you sympathize with the AI, and there are times when the AI are capable and even are in situations where they could destroy the U.S. military, and they probably could even destroy Colonel Howell if they really wanted to, but they choose not to. And this is, I thought, something else very interesting that makes this AI movie, or this original sci-fi movie, makes this something that makes it very original, is that they actually, not only do you really sort of side with the AI, but they actually give a lot of humanity to the AI, and the writing, allows the AI to make these human choices. You know what I mean? It's almost like not the aliens, but it's almost like the robots and the artificial intelligence are more human than the humans themselves. So I really appreciated that. I really like those scenes when the AI could absolutely have, maybe destroyed some of the U.S. military or factions of the military. They had opportunities to kill lots of humans, and they chose not to. And I really think that this is also what really helps Joshua sort of make that decision, where maybe not all the AI is bad. Maybe he doesn't want to just, maybe it's not so black and white as he might think, because once he starts to sort of bond with Elfie, and he starts to, care for her, and really come to the decision where maybe the right thing to do is have a mutual agreement. Maybe neither side should win, and maybe both sides should both win, and have there be a peace, as opposed to one side having to annihilate the other. And I think one thing that really helps him get to this point is the fact that he ends up not really living, but he ends up spending a lot of time with these AI in their own, community and whatnot. And he learns that, like I said, it's not always so black and white as it seems. They treat him well, they keep him alive well. He starts to learn about the other humans that are helping them, and all that stuff. So I really appreciated that. Like the story and the writing of the movie really allows us to marinate in that world. It really makes us be able to, sympathize with not only the AI, but also with the people helping the AI. And like I said, I just think the writing in this movie was done so well that, you really do forget sometimes that, the robots are not real, because the decisions that they make and the things that they do are oftentimes more real than what the humans would do or say. So I really like that. And then, of course, eventually Joshua ends up getting locked up as well. He ends up getting locked up, because he's considered a threat to the AI. They think he's a threat and whatnot. But then it turns out that Elfie ends up helping Joshua, because she sees that maybe he is, willing to, sacrifice himself for her. And maybe she sees, because remember, she is supposed to be a weapon, which I would think, a part of being that weapon as well, I would think, is that she's probably more intelligent than any of the other AI. So not only does she have a lot of capabilities with, controlling machinery or having almost like these abilities. And I also, oh man, that's something that's so cool about this movie as well, is that whenever Elfie did use her abilities, she would oftentimes put her hands together as if she was actually praying or saying a prayer to God. And I thought that was a very interesting choice as well. And it really, really works in this movie. It really does work. Having Elfie not only have these abilities to be able to control machinery and that kind of stuff, but she does it in a way where she actually prays. And I really like that. I thought that was really good as well. So of course, then I'm trying to think, there's another AI character as well, I believe his name was Heron, who's portrayed by Ken Watanabe, and he does an absolutely excellent job as well. Like I said, he's someone who sides with the AI. He helps with the AI. Well, he is an AI. He is a robot, and so he's also a lot of the reason why Josh ends up sort of, siding with them and wanting to help them and whatnot. And not only that, but Joshua also is, I believe he was a double amputee. So, he has a robotic arm and a robotic leg as well, which, is kind of, symbolic considering that he's trying to fight against these robots, if you know what I mean. So when he himself is half, not half, but a large part of him is sort of bionic as well. So they do a really good job with that and whatnot. And then after about an hour and 20 minutes, or maybe after about an hour and a half, roughly, I'd say it's probably not quite an hour and a half, but probably like around an hour and 20 minutes, roughly, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, give or take a few minutes. But that's when the movie starts to really step up and become even better, because this is now when we sort of get to the beginning of the final conflict between man and machine. And there is just this absolutely amazing, honestly, just straight up breathtaking scene. And I mean breathtaking from every aspect. It's emotional, it's visually stunning, and it's really, really cool sort of character development for Alfie. And it's great that Joshua gets to witness this as well. And basically you have, I'm pretty sure all the big characters are here to witness this. So you have like Joshua, Howell, Haran, and then obviously Alfie, because she does it. But basically what happens is the U.S. military ends up basically coming to this bridge, and it's not a great bridge. It's a pretty clumsy, or seems to be a relatively clumsy bridge. It's made of wood. I mean, it's sturdy, it's strong, but it doesn't seem like it's only wood, so it doesn't seem like it would take very much to destroy it. Maybe one single bomb or two bombs would have the ability to destroy this bridge. And on one side of the bridge you have the AIs and the people helping the AI, and then on the other side of the bridge you have the U.S. military, and they are basically about to do their final showdown. But what I thought was really cool with this is that the U.S. military also has their own form of sort of robots and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff. And they basically have these, what I call runners, these robots that are runners, but they are running to self-destruct. So it's almost like suicide robots, so to speak, where they put a bomb on it and the thing runs into the enemy territory and then explodes and blows up. Now, before we quite get to that scene, now we do have another callback to what I was saying, the original Star Wars. Well, not the original Star Wars, but Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. If you can remember when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, when they first rescue Jar Jar Binks, they're running through a forest, and you have all these giant droid ships coming, and in the distance all you see is trees falling down because of this thing coming at them. Well, you get that scene here in The Creator as well, as the U.S. military approaches with this really good-looking CGI piece of machinery. As they are approaching, all the trees and everything are falling down in front of them. So once again, another really big Star Wars, at least to me, it seemed like a very big Star Wars reference again, or at least a big Star Wars piece of inspiration and whatnot. And this is, of course, the military coming in with those robotic suicide bombers that I was just talking about. And that whole action sequence was just straight up phenomenal. I thought it looked good. It felt good. It sounded good. It was just really, really cool overall. And like I said, this was, once again, now the only thing the big problem that I have with this is that I still feel like the U.S. military looked too much like the Star Wars Rebels. I almost feel like Gareth Edwards, I feel like he almost, took the costume design from Rogue One with the Rebels and basically copied and pasted it here. I mean, I know it's not literally a copy and paste, but you get what I'm saying. I did find that it was almost a little bit too similar. And oftentimes I felt like a lot of the fighting, especially with the weapons, it felt very Star Warsy, like they were laser weapons, or you know what I mean? Like they're kind of like stormtrooper weapons and whatnot, and all that kind of stuff. And this is also the very first time when we really see Alfie and her abilities, so to speak, or her power really come into fruition, because we have these two characters which are almost neutral, really, to some degree. You have Joshua and Alfie, who doesn't really, they're both sort of tired of the war, and neither one of them really wants to be a part of the war. All either one of them wants, I believe, is peace. Joshua is sort of on this redemption arc, and he sort of wants to, find that new family, so to speak, or that new sense of being. And then Alfie is just trying to protect her people, because she is almost kind of like their messiah, so to speak, their savior. and they are not on this bridge, but they're underneath the bridge in this boat. And this is the first time when you really get to see the AI showing some really big human, qualities, because Elfie does not want to leave her people, and she doesn't want them to just straight up die. And of course, as these giant machineries are coming with the U.S. military, all this advanced technology, they're just literally destroying everything. They're blowing up the citizens. They're killing all the robots, the AI. And even though not most, but even though a lot of the civilization are robots, they still look like people. So it looks like they're bombing women and children and all these things. And it's just, it's hard to watch, even though they're not real. Once again, like I said, this movie does a phenomenal job at really making you, sort of go in between your emotions. You question the morality. And one thing I really liked about this sequence, though, actually probably my favorite part of the whole film, actually, was the little monkey. They have like this little monkey, which I guess is an AI monkey, because I don't think a real monkey would know how to do this. But they have this little monkey who has has the detonator for the bomb, because they end up throwing a bomb at one of the U.S. Pieces of machinery, the U.S. Army's machinery, and they end up blowing it up with this little kill switch. But it's a monkey that has the kill switch, so I just thought that was really funny, really cute. So it's just really, for me at least, it was just really funny. I thought it was really funny. And the monkey was really cute, and I really loved seeing it. But this is also the first time when and another great job that they did here with their sort of humanizing the AI, is that there is a group of real humans here, and while this battle is going on, one of the robots is trying to is basically trying to run away because the robot doesn't want to die. Now, this is not a robot that looks like a human. This is not like a humanoid bot. This is just straight up a robot. It does not look like a robot. It is just straight up a robot. And this robot is basically trying to run away from being killed, but it ends up running towards this little hut, or like this little grass area, almost like a tribal type thing. And as it approaches, it notices that there is a bunch of humans inside there, but I think it's humans, or maybe they are robots. Are they robots, or are they humans? No, I think they are humans, and it's a part of they're the humans that are living with the AI, and this robot, he doesn't want those children and women and those humans to die, so the robot actually sacrifices itself. Now, this is before Alfie actually gets up there to sort of intervene. But once again, that does a phenomenal job at showing that this AI is not really the monster that we think it is, because the AI was willing to destroy itself for the sake of saving those humans. So I thought that was great character development for the AI itself. So not like necessarily an independent character development, but a form of development for the AI as a whole. With the exception of Elfie and everything else. But Elfie will be included in this. And then, of course, after we see that scene where we see the AI willing to take their own life and willing to blow up their own body for the sake of saving the humans, then we get to another breathtaking scene where Elfie, the child, the weapon, who they would probably consider to be their messiah, then she steps in with one of those bombing suicide bombers robots that the U.S. military releases on the AI, and she actually stops it, and she is, she's basically willing to basically put her own life on the line and stop this. And this here is the first time she really exercises her power, to a big extent. She's able to control that machinery and whatnot. And this was a great opportunity for both. This was a great, I shouldn't say opportunity, but this was a great scene for both the AI and humanity, because when Elfie does this, she basically stops that machinery from going any further and blowing up her own civilization. But also at the same time, Joshua knows that Elfie is now at risk, and because the U.S. military obviously is going to attack her. I mean, everybody in the U.S. military is after her, and they send a soldier in, and that soldier, which I believe his name was McBride, who's portrayed by Mark Menaka, or I believe is how you pronounce his name or something, and he does a phenomenal job as well. But he actually goes up there and shoots Elfie, and this is now a time when Joshua must choose between the AI and humanity. And Joshua runs out and actually sort of covers the little girl Elfie, even though she's a robot. Like I said, they do a really good job at making us forget that it's a robot. And he ends up shooting McBride in the leg, but he doesn't kill him. And he tells McBride, basically, he tries to tell him to stop. Basically tells McBride, you don't need to do this. Stop. We don't need to annihilate these AI. They do have emotion. They're not as evil as we think. I mean, he don't literally say that, but that's what he's implying. This is the first time that we've seen a human now, or at least a human that was a part of the U.S. military, like Joshua. This is the first time now that we are actually seeing, a member like Joshua now, stick his neck out and risk his life to save Elfie. And this is really the tipping point of really what makes, this is what makes really the AI actually trust Joshua and take him in, and now really truly want to protect him, because he was willing to risk his own life, and he did put his own life on the line to save their weapon, or their so-called messiah, so to speak. And he actually almost gets really badly injured doing so. He doesn't, but he almost does, because the self-destructing robot that Elfie stopped still ends up blowing up. And so that really makes the AI, and especially characters like Harun, it really makes him trust Joshua now. And this is really the tipping point of where Joshua now starts to really truly go down sort of that redemption arc, and he's starting to be redeemed. His humanity is coming back. He's starting to become much more grounded now, and he starts to see his purpose a little bit more. And honestly, it was a really beautiful scene. It was a very emotional scene. It was a very symbolic scene when man and machine are now finally, to some degree, coming to an agreement that maybe peace is the answer. Neither side needs to be destroyed. Maybe peace is all that is required, and whatnot. So, I just really like seeing that. And then, of course, we continue to see flashbacks as well from Joshua and his family. So that was really cool. And we start to see Joshua, he starts to hug Elfie. He starts to really love Elfie and all that stuff. And then, of course, we get to a really big reveal, actually. And Joshua learns that his wife is actually not dead. Maya is actually very much alive, and she is a lot of the reason for Elfie, because she basically created Elfie, and I believe Elfie is sort of like her child, which resembles Joshua's child as well. So Elfie is sort of Joshua's child, even more than just metaphor, even more than just symbolic, because Elfie, I believe, was created by Josh's wife, Maya, who he thought and presumed dead, and he turns out that she's alive, but she is dying. She's not going to be able to live. She's not going to be able to survive, but it does allow him to have an opportunity to actually, say goodbye. And he does. He says goodbye, and then Elfie, basically helps him. And I believe Elfie also downloads her memories or her consciousness, or what, it downloads her basically onto a file, which you'll see later is actually inserted into another robot, or into another form of AI, which will end up looking like Maya, which really does basically ends up making the movie go into a full circle, because the movie starts with with Joshua losing his family, losing his pregnant wife, and all this kind of stuff. And then by the end of the movie, he kind of reunites and reconnects with a new family, but this family is with the AI, but still his child, and looks like his wife, with his wife memories and all that kind of stuff. So that was really cool. And like I said, that was a really emotional scene as well. Once again, really tugging at the heartstrings, and basically the audience sort of goes along with Joshua. You know what I mean? As Joshua is sort of redeeming himself, and as he's sort of sympathizing with these robots and with the AI, while us as an audience, we are also going on that journey with him, and we are also sort of sympathizing with these AI the same as him. And it was just an absolutely beautiful scene, and it was really beautiful. And we learned that his wife Maya was very heavily involved with the AI, and with the AI civilization, and with that race and whatnot. So I just thought it was really nice, and it was really clever, a really good form of writing as well, and whatnot. So of course, Joshua and and Elfie they end up, of course, getting captured by the U.S. military, and they, of course, ends up wanting to shut Alfie down. Just because once again, they're really afraid of what Alfie can do. They don't really know what the consequences would be, but for letting something like Alfie live. So they're very much trying. They really don't want Alfie to be around, basically. So when once they get kidnapped, once Joshua and Alfie gets kidnapped by the U.S. military, then obviously Joshua is going to want to help Alfie escape because they just he's grown an attachment to it. And also another thing that this movie has been doing too, all throughout the movie, is it's also been hinting a lot at the afterlife, like things such as heaven. The robots talk about heaven, the humans talk about heaven. There's one absolutely just devastating scene in the movie where Alfie actually looks at Joshua and asks Joshua, is he going to go to heaven at one point? And Joshua's like, no, because I'm a bad man, or something like that, he says, or something along the lines where he talks about how he's not going to be in heaven because he's a bad man. But then Alfie also says that she's not going to be in heaven because she is not real. And it was just absolutely devastating. Such an emotional scene. But that doesn't really happen yet. That sort of happens later on. I'm just sort of rambling on here. But it was still such a powerful, impactful scene. Once again, showing the skill and showing the skill of the writing and even the directing and also the acting, the cast. Like I said, Mendeline Voiles does a great job. John David Washington does a phenomenal job and whatnot. So, but anyways, while they are kidnapped, basically Joshua ends up putting Alfie back online. He ends up starting her up. He makes her functional again, and then they come up with a plan, a way that they can see the only way to sort of have a peace, so that neither side really has to win or lose, and so that Alfie can live on to hopefully try and represent peace, hopefully to try and keep the peace. Their plan now is that they are going to take a ship up to this giant weapon that the U.S. military had, which is almost like a Death Star. So once again, sort of, you can see the inspiration coming from Star Wars, except this Death Star is not up in space. It's just really high up in the atmosphere, but it is inside of the Earth's atmosphere, and it's not the size of a planet. It's big, but it's not that big. It's not like a Death Star, literally, but you could see the inspirations, especially when when Joshua and them were sort of, trying to get up to the Death Star and whatnot, and they were, it felt, there were times when it felt very much like Rogue One again. For me, at least, it did. Maybe you guys don't get that vibe at all, but for me, I seen a lot of Rogue One inspiration, which is not a bad thing. Like I said, Rogue One was, for me at least, the best of all the modern Star Wars, but, I could really feel the Rogue One inspiration here. But anyways, Alfie and Joshua, they end up getting up to this giant, we're just going to call it the small scale Death Star, even though it's not really, but they end up getting up there, and so basically this is where the movie starts to come full circle. So the idea now is that Alfie and Joshua are going to destroy this. So Alfie has the AI advantages. So she's able to control machinery. She can sort of control this thing. She can open doors, anything that might, have them locked out. She has this ability to almost basically control this thing. And what Joshua is going to do, Joshua is going to physically destroy this machine using bombs. So he sets a bomb up on one of the nukes because this machine has a whole bunch of weaponry, has a whole bunch of missiles and nuclear bombs and stuff. So really, he only has to detonate one. Because then it will be basically a chain reaction. But then Alfie will be on the inside controlling this giant mini Death Star thing, and that will be that's basically working together. They will be able to destroy this and make it blow up and take it out of the sky, so it can no longer be a threat to the AI. And even for not even be a threat to humanity either, for that matter, in case, I guess, if the military ever went rogue or something, at least the idea is that they're just going to destroy this, which will take away the advantage that the U.S. military has against the AI. And like I said, this is when the movie goes full circle, because this is now when what happens is Alfie ends up uploading, if you can remember earlier, when Joshua reunites with his wife, they ends up downloading her consciousness and her memories, or maybe not her consciousness, but they downloads her memories, Elfie does, and puts them on like a little drive. And once we get up here, then Elfie ends up creating an AI, or I don't know if this AI was already created or if she created it while she was up there, but she ends up creating a life, basically a real humanoid version of Joshua's wife, and then Elfie ends up uploading the memories into into the AI, I'm sorry, so that Joshua then has the ability to reunite with his wife. And also up here, in this giant or mini Death Star, basically there's like this garden and whatnot, so it becomes very biblical as well, with a lot of that whole Garden of Eden reference. It's very biblical. Alpha is sort of, it's the Alpha and Omega. It's the creator. It's the God of the AI. It's the Messiah, and she creates a new AI now, which gives Joshua his wife back, and of course Alpha sort of represents Joshua's child, and Joshua ends up making the ultimate sacrifice, allowing Alfie to live this time, and whatnot. But there was a really cool battle here, or a really cool robot, which put me in mind of Dr. Octopus, even though it wasn't a person like Dr. Octopus, but it had tentacles like a Dr. Octopus. So once again, I feel like that comes from an inspiration of maybe like the Matrix, even the way that these tentacles would grab you, even like the hand, so to speak, of the tentacles was very much like the Matrix. So once again, you could really see a lot of the references and whatnot, but I just really love that character design, and that technical design of that robot that Joshua sort of encounters at the end of it. But once again, with the help of Alpha, they end up being able to overcome this, and of course they end up destroying the Death Star. And then we have, like I said, an absolutely brutal, emotionally devastating scene where Joshua basically has to say goodbye to Elfie, but he gets her into an escape pod and launches her back down to the Earth, where she will land and reunite with her fellow artificial intelligence civilization. But in the meantime, Joshua is stuck up onto this mini Death Star, and he's in this sort of Garden of Eden, so to speak, with his wife, who was recreated by Elfie with her memories uploaded into the robot, and now basically this represents heaven, because like I said, all throughout the movie there are biblical themes: heaven, Garden of Eden, AI, creation of life itself, and all that kind of stuff. And the whole movie is constantly making you battle with morality, what's real, what's not real. Maybe all that realism is just a perspective, because that's really ultimately all it is that there's just a couple of different perspectives. You have the human perspective and you have the AI's perspective, but both of them seem to I guess it depends on which side you choose. Do you think the humans are right for this, or do you think that do you think that they went too far, and that the AI could very well live happily ever after without being a threat to humanity? So you're constantly in that struggle between right and wrong, what's real and what's not real, and all that stuff. And then of course the very ending of the scene basically shows that giant mini Death Star crashing into the Earth, with Alfie reuniting with her civilization, and she really shows a lot of emotion and whatnot. Now, whether or not there will be a sequel to this movie, I could totally see there being a sequel as long as the movie performs well. I do think that we will get a sequel. This in fact could even be a franchise, and I think that the second movie will do much better than the first movie, because I think the first movie the creator did not really have a whole lot to go on in terms of like the marketing and stuff. So like this movie is a brand new original sci-fi movie, but it's really hard to get a bunch of people go see a sci-fi that's an original if it doesn't really have much of a reputation to begin with. And also, I don't really feel like the marketing was really all that big for this movie. But I think that after this movie is released, with the good critical response that it's getting, it seems like most people who are fans of sci-fi and this type of movie and AI and like Matrix type movies and whatnot, I feel like all of us that are a part of the science fiction community, I do think that, just through word of mouth, I do hope and I do think that this movie will perform well. And if it does, I have no doubts in my mind that we'll get a second, maybe even a third movie that follows this story. I do think that it is possible that David could have survived. I think it's possible that his AI version of his wife, the AI Maya, I think that maybe she could have somehow helped. Maybe Alfie even put a small piece of herself into Maya. I think it would be really cool that if in the second movie they did somewhat of a time jump or something, and maybe Joshua is now reaching the end of his life. And so Alfie, downloads his memories and then puts him into a robotic body. So I think that would be really cool to see in the future for like a sequel, or maybe even a set of sequels, maybe a couple of sequels. If they turn this into a franchise, I think it would be really cool if Joshua eventually becomes the AI, which would truly, be the confirmation of that bond, which would truly confirm the alliance between man and machine, because this will be a man who chose to become a machine, whereas Maya didn't really have a choice, even though she is still a great bridge to love. She's more of the symbolic motherly sort of love symbolism for the between man and machine, whereas Joshua would be he's a man who could eventually choose to become a machine with the help of Alfie and Maya. So I do think that this movie ends in a way where there is a solid conclusion. This is a good one-off movie. There does not need to be a sequel, but I also think that it ends in a way that sets up where there could be a sequel and whatnot. And I do think that it is possible for Joshua to have survived that crash. But if they decided not to do a sequel, then I could understand that as well. So you could leave it at bay, but I do think they'll do a sequel. I think that they might even, I would imagine that this will become at least a trilogy, but they will have to keep, I think, the same team, because there's a lot to work with here, and I'm always someone who likes to combine franchises. So like whenever I used to watch the Matrix movies, like I would oftentimes watch 2001 A Space Odyssey and then watch 2010, the year we made contact. Even though there's absolutely no relationship between those movies, I'm someone who likes to combine franchises. I'm such a movie lover, I'm such a movie fan, that I do oftentimes combine franchises that are similar, and then I do sort of treat them as almost like a multiverse or sort of like a form of continuity. With 2001 A Space Odyssey shows the evolution of man, how man, goes from a monkey to eventually creating artificial intelligence. And while now, if you were to go a lot further, then you watch at the Matrix movies and the Matrix franchise, and you see what the bad consequences of the artificial intelligence if AI wanted to become evil and mean and force humanity into this form of slavery. So you could see that part. You can get all that by watching the Matrix. But then when you watch the Animatrix shows the beginning of the war, shows the beginning of AI and whatnot during the shorts, which are known as the second Remnants, I think it's called, and that, so you can see the origin. Well, I would now put the creator in between those franchises. So now I would watch 2001 A Space Odyssey, 2010, the year we made contact, and then I would watch the creator, because the creator now is sort of like that war that we never got to see with the Matrix. And I think that even some of the robotic designs, even some of the choices that the creators of this film went with, some of the designs and some of the just some of the designs, some of the sort of like the shots and how the robots look, you could tell that some of that maybe was very reminiscent to the Matrix, especially the Animatrix. There's also another short, well, actually it's the longer short, the 20-minute short, I believe it is, in the Animatrix as well, where, like I said, you get a lot of reminiscence of man and AI sort of, fighting against each other, but in a very different way. It's more of a psychological thing, which I think this movie done. This movie done a really good job with emotion and the psychological impact and the emotional impact of what would happen potentially with a man versus machine war, especially if it wasn't so black and white. It's not like these AI were bad. It's not like the artificial intelligence was straight up wanting to kill humanity. They were simply defending themselves because they believed they have a right. And then you have to question the morality of it. Well, maybe they do have a right. Maybe humanity did go a little bit too far and we did get it wrong, and because of our own ignorance and our own fear of not being afraid of what we don't understand, maybe in this movie The Creator, maybe humanity really are the villains and maybe we really did go too far. So it really does a great job at showing at showing that, I think, and this movie The Creator does a great job at, like I said, questioning what's real, what's not real, and really does a great job at questioning our morality versus morality versus reality, and is it possible for us to have both? Is the reality that we are morally able to connect, or is the reality that the AI really is a threat potentially in the future and would eventually no longer need us and would eventually become more of that aggressive AI that you would see in something such as The Matrix? So either way, I absolutely love this movie. I do hope there will be a sequel. I do believe there will be a sequel, but I definitely hope there will be a sequel. I think this movie really hits on every level. It's a great original science fiction piece with a great cast, a great writer, and a great director. Well, the writer and the director, Gareth Edwards, he didn't write the movie on his own, but he did direct the movie. And, and him and Chris Wyatt, I hope that they will both, continue to work together to build this into a franchise and whatnot. And I think that there's a lot of potential for this movie to become a franchise, but also I think that there's a big appetite for people in the science fiction community, such as myself and you, I'm sure, listening. We want to see more of these types of movies be created. We want to see these things become franchises, but they have to stay true to what they are. They have to keep being good franchises. It's not just about making a movie, it's also about making a good movie, which is all we can ask for and which is all we can hope for. And with that being said, folks, that is my open spoiler discussion and sort of breakdown and my thoughts and opinions about certain parts of the movie and some of the scenes and whatnot of the creator. So let me know if you've seen it down below, and if you liked it, tell me why or why not. If you're listening to this on the podcast, and don't forget to follow along on the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, click that subscribe button and help our channel grow with liking, sharing, commenting. I definitely want to know your thoughts, whether you're a subscriber or not. Definitely let me know your thoughts and all that good stuff. And I absolutely love the creator. I hope it does become a franchise, and I cannot wait to see what happens to this movie and to this franchise, potential franchise, in the future. So folks, that's all I got for you. So until the next podcast or the next video, take care.